Welcome back everyone to another video from scriptingisfun.com. This is Mike Page, and today we're going to be continuing our tutorial series on making a platform game in Unity. So in this video we're going to be looking at setting up an enemy. We're going to give this enemy a simple patrol AI for it's just going to be patrolling between a couple of waypoints and back and forth. So that's our goal for today. Let's jump right in and get it done. So the first thing we want to do to get our enemy set up is to find a sprite for our enemy, and we're going to put him up here on this platform right here and have him patrolling this platform. So let's go into our sprites and let's find our enemy. So we have this blue one here, and we also have a red one. So why don't we use the red one here because he's got a bit of a walk animation with him. So let's do this. So when you make an enemy, if you want to bring him in with an animation, what you need to do is go ahead and select all the sprites in his animation and drag those in together, and then Unity will create the animation along with the game object. So I'm going to click on this first sprite here, and then I'm going to go down to the last sprite of the walk cycle, and I'm going to shift click that. That way all of these are selected. You can see all 5 of them over here in the inspector. Then I'm going to drag that out into my scene and just drop them in where I want them to be. And Unity will detect that I dragged up more than one sprite, so it's going to assume I want an animation. So we'll just call this red enemy walk. And let's make a folder to put that in. We have a player animations folder. Let's just click here and make a new folder. And we'll call this our enemy animations. And then we'll just go ahead and save it into there. Alright, if we look in our animator down here, we can see that it's got red enemy walk here as its only state. For now, we're just going to go ahead and have this guy constantly walking, so we really only need one animation state, and that's for him to be walking back and forth. So now that we have the enemy in our scene, you notice he kind of disappeared here on me because he's getting back behind our background here. So we need to go in and put him in the right layer. So let's go into our sprite renderer on our new enemy here, and let's change it from the default sorting layer to the platform layer. We'll stick him right in here on top of the platforms for now. Now he shows up again. Let's also give him a name here other than this default name it got off the sprite sheet. So let's just call this red enemy, so that we now know where he's at in the hierarchy. And you notice he came up with the sprite render and the animator. If I hit play, he should play this animation that we put on him when he came in. And you can notice it looks like he's moving pretty fast here. So that's probably faster than we want his animation to run. So let's go and modify his animation real quick by going to animation. We're clicked in on the red enemy. We got the red enemy walk animation here. It's set to 12 samples per second. Let's go ahead and put that maybe at 6. So we'll slow him down by half. Let's hit play here in the animation window. So maybe we'll try that. That seems to be a little bit better of a speed. We can always tweak it later if we need to. Okay, so we've got him in here. We've got him animating. We're going to need him to move back and forth, and we're going to want him to be able to stay on top of this platform here, which has a collider on it. So he's also going to need a collider and a rigid body so that he will stay held down onto the ground by gravity. So let's go to our enemy here, and let's add in a rigid body 2D. And we'll go ahead and make sure we freeze in the constraints, freeze rotation Z so he doesn't accidentally fall over as something runs into him. And then let's also add a collider. So let's go to our physics 2D. Let's go get him a capsule collider. Again, I do like using capsule colliders for characters that move around because it's got that rounded edge, and if we had him moving up and down a less smooth surface, we wouldn't want the edges of his collider to get caught. And let's go ahead and shrink that collider in a little bit here. So we're going to go to the size on the X here. Let's drag that down about like that so it's a little more central to his body. And we'll just maybe bring the Y down slightly as well. And then we can offset on the Y slightly so that this collider is right down at the bottom of his feet. So we want to kind of get this right here, kind of where his feet would be touching the ground. Okay? So now if we hit play, he should actually fall. So actually if I drag him up a little bit here and I hit play, we should see him fall down to the ground and stand there because he's got gravity applied now. And there he is. So he's standing on the ground there now and he's doing his animation. Alright, the next thing to do then is to work on getting him to patrol back and forth. So we're going to put a couple of empty game objects in here for him to patrol between. And we're actually going to set this up so that we can have a prefab of our enemy and his patrol points all together as one piece. And that way we can drag out more of these and just adjust each of their individual patrol points so that they can all have separate patrol points and have that set up. So that's kind of our goal here to set this up. So the first thing I'm going to do is make an empty game object over here that's going to contain my enemy and his patrol points. So we're just going to go to Hierarchy, Create. We're going to create an empty game object. Let's just actually call this red enemy. And then inside of this one here, let's change its name just to enemy. So inside of red enemy here, I'm going to put a space there. So once I make my empty game object here, I want to make sure that it's all zeros on its position. I want its coordinates to match up with the game world's coordinates. So to do that, you can just hit the little gear here in the transform and hit reset. That'll set everything to 0 here. So now this empty game object here is sitting right here at the middle of our game world. Okay. And then I'm going to drag my enemy here, my actual red enemy here, into that empty game object so it becomes a child of it. So now he's inside of this container, and this container is matched up with the world's coordinate system, so where he's sitting right now is still going to be right here and match up exactly with the world's coordinates. That's very important that we do that. Okay, now I'm going to put in his waypoints. So I'm going to add those as empty child game objects to the red enemy container here. I'm going to right click, create empty. We're going to call this patrol point 1. And let's go up here and give this a little icon so we can see it. So if you go to this little color cube, gizmo cube here, next to the name, you can click it. And then we can actually give it a label. So let's give this kind of like a little red diamond. So this now will show me exactly where that empty game object is. So if I go to the move tool, you can see that that's the center of this object. So let's go ahead and position this right here on the edge of this platform. And then let's make another one. So I'm just going to duplicate this object for the moment, Control D. And I'm going to pull this one over here to this side. And this has changed its name to Patrol Point 2. So now, inside this parent object for red enemy, I've got my enemy, and I've got his 2 patrol points. Next, we're going to start working on our enemy script. So let's go into our scripts folder here, and let's create a new C# script, and we're going to call this, we'll just call this red enemy script. Alright, and let's attach that to our enemy. So I'm clicking in on my enemy here, not the parent game object, but the enemy object, and I'm going to give him the red enemy script right there, so he has it. We want the enemy to move back and forth here between these 2 patrol points. We want him to move towards one till he hits it, then we want him to reverse direction and move till he hits it. So we want to just kind of do this ping pong kind of a back and forth patrol behavior here on top of our platform. So we're going to need to have the enemy be aware of where his patrol points are and then be able to move in the direction of his patrol point. So that's what we're aiming for. Let's go into our script here. And so up here at the top, let's make a variable to hold the patrol points. So let's do a public transform, and this is going to be an array, so we're going to put our square brackets in for the array, and let's call this patrol points. Okay, so he's got patrol points. We're also going to have to know what his current patrol point is that he's moving towards. So let's make a public transform, and let's just call this current patrol point. This is the one he should be currently moving towards. And then we're going to also need to keep track of which index number in our array is our current patrol point at. We need to kind of look for that. So we're going to also keep a public int. We're going to call this current patrol point index, like so. So those three variables, let's go ahead and save this, and let's go out into Unity and put those patrol points in. Before we do that, actually, in this current patrol point index, when the game starts, let's make sure that's set to 0, so that it will be ready to grab the first patrol point in the array. So we'll save that. Let's go back to Unity, and then on our enemy here, let's look at a script, and you can see now we've got the patrol points array right here. We only have 2 patrol points, so let's just make this a size of 2, and let's drag patrol point 1 into the first one and patrol point 2 into the second one, like so. And then we're all set up here. The patrol points are linked in, and we will do the rest in our script. So let's save our scene and go back into Visual Studio. So when the game starts, we want to make sure we load up our current patrol point to be equal to the patrol point that's first in our array. So we're going to go current patrol point equals. I just noticed I had a typo here. Let's fix this typo. Hopefully you caught that already. There we go, patrol points. And then that should pop up in my list. Okay, so the patrol point we want is the one that is at the current patrol point index, which we set to 0. So this will make my current patrol point, which is a transform variable here, equal to the transform inside the array at position 0, which is the first element in our array, which would be patrol point 1 out in our world. So we got that all set up like that. We then need to look at which way our enemy has to move, in a positive or negative direction. So before we do that, let's actually just get him moving, and then we'll look at controlling which direction he's moving so we can get him to move towards the correct patrol point. So what we'll do here in the update function is we're just going to move him with the transform.Translate. So transform.Translate. We want him to move on the x-axis here, so we're just going to move him on a vector 3, actually we can do a vector 2, dot right. And then we're going to take that times time.delta time, so that we are moving not on a frame-based movement, but a time-based movement. And we're also going to want to take that times a speed variable. So let's put that in, and then we'll set it up here in just a second. So let's make the speed variable up at the top. So public, let's go ahead and do a float here, and we'll call this speed. There we go. Let's save this, and let's go out into Unity here, and let's take a look at how we can use speed to control the direction of movement of our enemy. If I give his speed a positive value here, he moves to the right. If I give it a negative value, he moves to the left. So we want his speed to change between a -1 and a +1 here, so we can control his direction. So we need to determine, first of all, which direction his patrol point is from him. So let's go in and look at how to do that, and then we can adjust our speed to match. So when we set a patrol point, so let's just do this up here in the start function. When it starts, we're giving him his patrol point. Then let's check to see which direction he is from his patrol point. So we're going to do a little if here, and we're going to say if current patrol point dot position dot x, if that is less than our transform dot position dot x. So we're comparing now the current patrol point's position on the x-axis. If that coordinate is less than the enemy, red enemy here, his position on the x, then we know that that patrol point is to the left of our enemy because its x-coordinate is less than the enemy's x-coordinate. If that's the case, then we want our speed to be a negative number. So we'll say speed equals -1 float. Okay? If that's not true, which means that the patrol point's x position is greater than our enemy's position on the x, then we know he needs to move to the right. So we'll just put an else in here. And then in here, we'll just set speed equal to a +1. So that will handle the movement in the right direction. Now the other thing we need to do then, once we set him moving, is we need to be checking every frame to see if he has reached the patrol point that he's been moving towards. So there's a couple of different ways we could do that. We could do that through colliders, or we could do that through just a distance check to the patrol point. So in this case, I'm just going to do a distance check to the patrol point. So let's go down here into the update function. After we move our player, because now we've helped establish the direction of movement through the speed variable, then let's just check to see if we're close enough to the patrol point that we have reached it, and then we should move to the next one. So then we're going to say if, we're going to say vector2 dot distance. Then we have to give it the two vector 2's that we want it to check through, so the distance between A and B. So we're going to feed in our destination we're trying to go to. That's going to be our current patrol point dot position. And then we're going to give it the enemy's transform dot position as the second point. So if the distance between those is less than, let's say, maybe a 0.2. If that's the case, we want to take action. So vector2.distance is going to return us a float number that's going to be the distance in Unity units between point A and point B. So between the current patrol point's position and the enemy's position. I'm asking if that gets smaller than 0.2 units, then we're going to switch. Now, I don't want it to be 0 because there is a chance that if we don't position these exactly right, that he could totally miss the patrol point. So I'm giving a little bit of a buffer there, and that might need to be adjusted depending on how we're trying to apply this. But if that's true, we've reached our patrol point. If we've reached our patrol point, then what we need to do is we need to load the next patrol point and then send our enemy off in that direction. So it's going to be similar to what we did up here in the start function, except we have to figure out what our next patrol point is. In our patrol points here, we only have two. We have an element 0 and an element 1. We're starting at element 0. What we need to do is find out when it's time to switch is, do we have another one in our array? If we don't have another one in our array, then we need to go back to 0. If we're at 0, we want to go to 1. And we're going to write this so that it will work with more than 2 patrol points, because perhaps in your game you want the enemy to go between multiple patrol points. Maybe you want your enemy even to fly, so you'll have to adjust it a little bit more, because right now we're just moving on the x-axis and not the x and the y. But it could be modified to do that. So let's kind of break this down. So the first step is to decide if we have another patrol point in our array or if we're at the end of our array. So what we can ask here is we can get the current patrol point index. We can ask if that is less than patrol points dot length. And then we're going to have to say -1. I'll show you why that is in a second here. So, and let's put this in an if statement here. So we're going to say if current patrol points index is less than our patrol points length -1. If that is true, then we have another patrol point. So we're going to just bump ourselves up to the next patrol point by just setting it current patrol point index. And we're just going to say plus plus here. So we're going to say, okay, whatever you are, go to the next one. So if it's at 0, which it would have to be in this case, then it's going to make it a 1. If this is not true, if we are not less than the length minus 1, then we have to be equal to it. And if we're equal to it, then we're on our last patrol point. I'll demonstrate that in a second. So then we'll just do an else. And in the else, instead of going to the next one on the list, we're at the last one, so we have to go to the first one. So we'll just set current patrol point index equal to 0 in that case, which will go back to the first one in the array, and then we'll start bumping back up through those orders. Now that we've determined which patrol point, current patrol point we should be going to, all we have left to do then is just to assign that patrol point to our current patrol point. So then we set current patrol point equal to patrol points at current patrol point index, and that will cause it to load our new patrol point transform out of that transform array of patrol points, and moving on. Okay, so that gets the next patrol point. We then also at that point have to do what we did up here. We have to determine if that new patrol point we just loaded in is to the left or to the right of us. Because again, you might want to put several patrol points in, and they might not necessarily be a ping pong kind of an effect like we've been doing so before. So I'm just going to copy this little code right here. I'm going to paste it in right down here like this. So the only time we're taking action here is if our distance is close enough. So this if statement's got to be true first. If it is, then we're loading up the correct patrol point, which this section's doing. And then after we do that, we're determining, okay, are we moving left or right? And we'll set our speed accordingly, and then we're good to go. So let's save this. At this point, if I didn't miss anything, it should actually function, and then we can walk back through it and kind of look at why this works. So when the game starts, he should move to the left, because this is patrol point 1 over here. Once he reaches it, he should change direction and go to the right until he reaches patrol point number 2 here, and then he should bounce back. So let's just see what he does. And you can see that it is actually working. He gets to that patrol point, and he immediately changes position. You can look down here to see his patrol point index is going between 0 and 1, and his speed is going between 1 and a -1, depending on which way he's going. And the way we've written this is if you add more patrol points here, he will bump between them in order. So if you had a more complex patrol path, you could lay that in. Again, if you want him to move on the X or the Y axis, you're going to have to take into account the Y coordinate for movement as well and build a different vector for him to move along. Or if he's going up like an incline, if you move him on the X, his collider will cause him to bump up on the Y as well. So you could have like some sort of a ramp here, and he would follow it up if you're just driving him on his X-axis. So we've got the basic patrol point and behavior in here. Let's go ahead and walk back through this to make sure that you understand what we did here. So in our script, every frame, once we get him moving here, we're checking to see if the distance between where he is and where he wants to go. So he's transform.Position. Patrol point's right here, current patrol point. If the distance between those is less than a 0.2, so 0.2 units, then we're going in here and we're checking to see if the index of his current patrol point in the array is less than patrol points.length -1. So let's take a look at that. Out here in his patrol points, you've got a 1 and a 0, element 1 and 0. He starts at 0. There are 2 elements in this array. When I ask for the length of an array, when I said patrol points.length, that gives me the 2. It's going to tell me this has 2 items in it. But the difference is the index is started at 0. So 0 and 1. The last element in an array is always 1 less than its length. So in our script then, I'm asking if the current patrol point is less than patrol points.length, which would be a 2, minus 1 would give me a 1. Since 1 is the last index number in my array, I need to do it that way, because then I can say if 1 is less than 1, well, it's not. So that tells me I'm at the end. If I didn't put the -1 in here, this length would be a 2. It would say if 1 is less than 2, then go to the next one. Well, there isn't a next one. That would cause us to load up a current patrol point index of 2, and there isn't one in our array. So hopefully that makes sense how arrays work and how they're numbered and what patrol points .length gives us. So that helps us determine are we at the beginning or the end of our array. If we had several points in the array, then this would stay false here until we hit the very last one. Or this would be true until we hit the very last one, and it would just always add 1. If we are at the last one, if this comes back as false because our index is the same basically as the last index in our array, then the else will kick in and we'll go back to 0, which will start us back at the very first patrol point, and we'll go back through that way. So when you adjust your patrol points, make sure that between the last patrol point and the first patrol point, you've got a path that your character can follow. So you got to kind of put some thought into it. So that you can make him kind of do more of a circular patrol path. If you wanted to ping pong back and forth between the two endpoints, you would have to change your code here so that it would actually pull indexes in the backwards order instead of the forwards order. Alright, then once we figured out which patrol point index we should be loading, the next one in the array or the first one in the array, then we go ahead and set our patrol point equal to that. And then again, we're checking to see if our position on the X of the patrol point, if that's less than the position of our enemy, then we need to go to the left, which is a negative direction of movement, and otherwise it's to the right if it's a positive direction of movement. So let's neaten this up a little bit. This is a lot of code here that we just typed into our update function. So why don't we make this into its own function that we can just call from update? That's usually a good practice to do. So let's go down below the update function. So make sure you follow down where that ends. Let's put a few lines in here. And let's just make a void function here called getNextPatrolPoint. And then let's just copy and paste all this information down in. So let's get all of this. Let's cut that out and paste it in right here. And then we can just call getNextPatrolPoint right here. So let's just call getNextPatrolPoint. So now what we're doing is we didn't change anything. We just moved some code to its own little subroutine, its own little function, so that it's not going to make our update function really long, because that can be confusing for us to look at, right? And if there's ever any other conditions that would cause us to switch patrol points, we can now call it without the update function having to be involved. So if our distance gets close enough to switch, we'll call getNextPatrolPoint. That'll do the same thing here. It'll get our next index number, it'll set the next current patrol point, and then it will adjust the speed to left or right so our enemy moves in the direction that he should move. So that should basically do what we wanted to do today. Let's save this change. Let's go out into Unity and just double check that we didn't make any mistakes and that nothing has changed here. And you can see that our enemy is still moving back and forth. I can come over here a little closer to him here so we can see him up here in the game view as well. So there he is, moving back and forth on the platform, and he's good to go. Alright, so now let's go back to why we built it this way, with this enemy being inside of an empty game object here. And that's because now that I've done this and I've got him working, I can drag my red enemy, the whole container object, into my project panel and make him a prefab. So let's go to the assets. Let's actually just make a prefabs folder here. And then in this prefabs folder, let's go ahead and drag our red enemy down into here. So here he is now, and he's got all his pieces. He's got the enemy and he's got 2 patrol points inside of him. So if I want another enemy now, I can just drag a new prefab out. So let's say I want to put one up on this platform as well. So I can now just drag him out and drop him on the platform here. And then I can go in to this enemy and I can adjust his patrol points independently of the other ones, and these platforms ended up being roughly the same size. So let's just kind of tweak these a bit. You know, you can also tweak the enemy's starting position if you want to by selecting him and just moving him to one side or the other. And if we hit play here now, we'll have both these guys patrolling, and they're independent of each other. But I've done all the work one time and set up the prefab, so now I can just drag as many of these out here as I want to, set their patrol points. If I want some to have more patrol points than others, I can just go in and add more patrol points inside of that enemy, and then just drag them into my patrol points array here, and the code will automatically adjust for as many patrol points as you want. So if I hit play here now, we should have 2 enemies patrolling back and forth. So there you go. So now I have an enemy set up where I can just drag as many of these out as I want to, adjust where their patrol points are, their starting and their ending point, and they'll just do their job. So there you have it. We today have looked at how to make an enemy. We brought him in with a simple animation. We set him up to have a simple patrolling AI, and we looked at how to make him into a prefab so we can drag out multiples of this enemy already set up to patrol. All we have to do is just drag and drop a few things in the editor, and he's good to go. So hope you found this useful, and there's a lot of ways you can expand this and extend this, so go ahead and use this however you want. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to answer questions or help you with ideas that you have. In the next video, we'll take a look at how we can maybe start fighting these enemies now that we have some out in the scene. So until then, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.